Hello and welcome to the Fighting Chance podcast. I am Carl Spiller, joined by my co-host Paul Pacino. In each episode, we will speak with a different individual from the world of sport or wider fitness community. We take the opportunity to discuss both the personal and observed experiences of our guests. This gives us an insight into their career highs and lows and how they improved and maintained their mental well-being. We aim to delve into the mindsets of our guests, discussing when they felt at their most vulnerable. We hope this will help us further understand how we can support ourselves and others around us. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy.
Okay, here we go. Hello, everybody. This is episode number 3 of the Fighting Chance podcast. Unfortunately, my partner in crime, Paul Pacino, isn't here today, so I'll be entertaining our guests today. But we've got 2 brilliant guests. So our first guest is Gordon Wallace, and our second guest is George Scott. How are you guys doing today?
Fine, thank you.
And thank you. Nice to be
Good.
here.
It's lovely to have you guys on. So you guys have had kind of slightly different careers, but you've both had a heavy involvement in Liverpool Football Club. So I suppose my first question to start off with is to both of you really is what the setup's like when you first get through the doors that first day at Liverpool. We'll start with you, George. What's it like on that first day?
Well, we were only kids. We were only very young. We were 15 years of age when we met first at Anfield. And it really is quite an eye-opener, really, because you're a long, long way from home. In my case, 300 miles. Gordon, probably something similar. And we were a bit starry-eyed, really, at the time. Of course, Bill Shankly wasn't that as well known then as he become later. But he quickly made his mark on us. And I think the mark he made on us has stayed with us all the way through our lives. I think you'd agree, Gordon?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things George has just said there, that Bill Shankly instilled in you the ethics of life in general and how to look after yourself. What you're doing here, representing Liverpool Football Club, this great club. So it was a great honour that to come to this club and enjoy the whatever happened during the time we were there.
Sure. So how did it all come about then? If we go back just before you started for Liverpool, I'm presuming you guys were scouted. Was it? How did? I know you've obviously got it in your book, George. But for you, Gordon, especially, how did you get to that stage?
Well, I'm Scottish by birth, but my parents moved when I was 5 years of age down to South Wales. And during that time, between 5 and 15, before I came to Liverpool, I went to a rugby school, orientated school, but I enjoyed my football far better. I was scouted I played in an all-age group down in South Wales.
Okay.
And I was scouted, and I actually went to Huddersfield, where Bill Shankly was the manager.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you meet him before you'd already got to Liverpool then?
I had, yes. I had the privilege of going to Huddersfield on 3 separate weekends for trials. And obviously, I must have done all right, because after the 3rd weekend, Bill Shankly left to come to Liverpool. And believe it or not, within a week of him leaving, I'd had a letter from Liverpool Football Club, which I thought was, what's this? I didn't realise what it was all about. And when I opened it, it was from Bill Shankly offering me to come to for a fortnight's trial in the Easter, and that's where I first met George. Actually, he had come. Liverpool had brought so many youngsters from Scotland, and I was part of that.
So I remember in your book, George, you said that Liverpool wasn't particularly well known, especially because they were in the 2nd division. So did you, obviously because you was at Huddersfield, did you have a bit more of an idea on who Liverpool was, or was you in a similar boat?
No, very similar boat. When I went there, Dennis Law was the main man at Huddersfield. He created what Dennis Law is today, or was in those days. A tremendous player.
And obviously you coming from Scotland, I've seen it mentioned in your book, but just remind us, so how did it all happen for you?
When I was in Aberdeen, I only ever wanted to play for Aberdeen. I was a schoolboy footballer, got trials for Scottish schools. Unfortunately, I got injured in the last trial, but I made my mark a little bit in schools football, so Aberdeen wanted to sign me. So they made an offer of £6 per week to my parents as an apprentice to stay in Aberdeen, which I'd verbally agreed. And then the janitor at our school, or the caretaker, he was a scout for Liverpool, which I didn't know about. Bit of destiny, really. And he sent me down for the trial, and that's when I met Gordon. The trial was successful for both of us, but I still didn't want to sign for Liverpool because my grandmother and my grandfather didn't want me to leave Aberdeen, and neither did my parents, really. So it was only when I met Shankly and the impression he made on me in his office, which turned the corner, made me want to come to Liverpool. I remember saying to him, I can't come down here, Mr. Shankly, because, for example, my grandmother doesn't even know where Liverpool is. And he said, everybody will know where Liverpool is, son, shortly. Don't worry about that. So that was a great experience to meet the great man for the first time. And then the rest, I suppose, came down. Gordon and I went digs together. I have to forgive my throat's a little bit hoarse.
That's okay. Don't worry.
So, we came down, we got together, and we've been friends ever since. 61 years now, I think we've been mates.
Sure. It's a long time. It's a very long time. So I guess you're both 15 when you got through. So I can imagine homesickness probably played a big part. And I don't know whether did you get over it at Huddersfield from your homesickness, or was it still very much a part when you got to Liverpool?
Well, I only went for 3 weekends on trials. So really, it
wasn't really a factor.
There wasn't really a factor in it.
Sure.
But obviously, when we came to Liverpool, and we were 15 and a half by that time, and there was about 8 of us, and as I said, there were 7 Scotch lads, and I was, even though I'm Scottish, they called me the Welsh one. But we mingled, we were putting digs together, and when you're that age, you made good friends, and you enjoyed life to the full.
I mean, you can't imagine a kid today at 15 leaving home 300 miles to a big city they probably hardly even heard of to forge a career in football. I mean, I've got grandchildren, Gordon's got grandchildren. The thought of my grandson at 15 going off on his own to live and dig somewhere with some strange landlady, you wouldn't countenance it now. But in those days, as Gordon said, we all got together, we became pals, we mixed together. We even played 5-a-sides in Stanley Park against the English kids. Shankly would have went crazy if he knew we would do. But Shankly was a fantastic character. I mean, there's never been another person like him, as far as I'm concerned.
He was a very, unfortunately, he was before my time, but he seems like he was a very subtle psychologist. He's almost like the olden era of the mentality monsters that we have in Liverpool today, isn't he?
Yeah.
He was just positive all the time. You never get a negative word out of Shankly. Wasn't he, Gordon? He was absolutely positive. His voice.
I mean, who knows now, 60 years on, if Shankly had never signed for Liverpool, what this great club would have been like. I mean, they were in the 2nd division when he came. So if he hadn't signed for the club and another manager had come along, who knows?
Well, it was a turning point for the club, there's no question.
For this city, and he just loved the fans.
Sure. No, don't sell yourself short, though, guys. I mean, you two, along with the others that came through, you were certainly the foundations. And I think Bill Shankly said a similar thing to you, didn't he? That even though you might not necessarily have got a game for Liverpool, you were certainly very much a part of the foundations. And you can't build anything without foundations.
That's correct.
The problem we had was because there was such a great team, there was no substitutes in those days. So unless you were absolutely unbelievably special, you had a tough time to get into that team. And, you could go on to the age of 20. If you haven't broke in permanently, you had to move on. Because it's like today with people at Liverpool. They have to move on if they can't get in. And the great players, and they'll build a good career at other clubs. But we wanted to build our career with Liverpool. I unfortunately didn't quite get the nod. Gordon got in the first team and injuries prevented him from going on to what I think would have been a great career. And a lot of other people, unfortunately, in those days, the same thing happened. They would have made the grade at Liverpool had Liverpool not been Liverpool. Because every single player was an international.
Yeah, that's true. But you always got to realise, I mean, making it and not quite making it, it's such a fine.
Of course, yeah. Especially with
you just have to have the opportunity. I was fortunate. I was given the opportunity. Probably, as George says, I had a few injuries in my time, so it curtailed me a little. At least I think that way, anyway. I would like to think I would have played more games, but it wasn't to be, and that was it. And George, unfortunately, just didn't have that. He had the ability. There's no difference between George and myself, but unfortunately, fortunately for me, I was given the opportunity.
So why was you given the opportunity in the first place? Was it due to an injury to one of the first team players, or did you just get put in for?
No. I realised I used to play in the forwards in number 10 and number 8, or George was usually number 8 and I was 10. Inside forwards in those days.
Sure.
Do you know what that means?
Yeah, of course.
I know that. And I was then called in. Well, Joe Fagan, who was the reserve team chairman at the time, he says the boss wants you to go on the left wing. Now Alan Aycourt was in the first. He was the first team player at that time.
International.
Yeah. And he said, the boss wants you to go on the left wing. He says, why don't you try it on there? And I realised what it was for now. I played about 10 or 12 games, and the next thing, and because every Friday you used to look at the team sheets and where you were, and I'll never forget it. I went this Friday to look at the team sheet, and I wasn't in the reserves. I thought, what's going on here? I was so disappointed. I thought, A team, B team. I thought, I'm never thinking of looking at the first team.
Of course.
And of course, my name was on the first team, and then the boss told me at lunchtime. I was playing on the left wing.
No, what a feeling. Oh. And you must have been obviously proud. I know you never got that opportunity, but for your best friend to get through, I can imagine there's still a sense of pride, especially because you guys went through at the age of 15. I can imagine you've kind of built a family with each other.
Yeah, we all wanted everybody to do well. No question about that. Everybody wanted. Bobby Graham as well was great friends with Gordon and I. Bobby broke through. His breakthrough came a bit later, really. His big breakthrough, late 60s, he got into the team. But I mean, he had another one who had great ability and got through. One thing for me, when I left Liverpool, I went to Aberdeen, and I did brilliantly at Aberdeen, and I proved to myself I got the ability at the highest level. We beat Rangers 2-0, and I laid both the goals on. Went to South Africa, we were league champions, and if I'd have played at Liverpool in the first team like I was playing in South Africa, I'd have made it, no doubt about it. So as Gordon said, it's wafer thin. You just need the break.
Of course.
In fact, even the last game, I think, before I left Liverpool, Shankly put virtually a reserve team out, didn't he, against Wolves? And I wasn't in it, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't in it, because that was the top scorer on the team, reserves. And it was because he'd agreed £12,000 with Aberdeen, and he couldn't play me in the team because I'm on my way to Eddie Turnbull in Aberdeen.
So yeah,
if I'd had that one game, who knows? I could have scored a hat trick.
You could have done, yeah, absolutely. So I think that's the big difference between nowadays and playing back then, because I presume if you were sold, you didn't have a say. You probably just told you go in there and that was it. Whereas I can imagine the players have got a lot more control now, haven't they, on where they go?
They have agents, don't they, nowadays? Yeah. I mean,
we had no power at all. I mean,
no.
I mean, Liverpool in those days, 54,000 every game. Most of them were Scousers in the Cop. Yeah. Local people.
Yeah.
Very few foreign fans in those days. The crowd was fantastic, but the pay was not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we went, we got about £7 a week or something as apprentices. First team were on 20 a week. And then George Eastham and Jimmy Hill opened it up, freedom of contract. They started to get £100 a week. First team got bonuses for crowds, and they started to make £200-300 a week. But us in the reserves are still making 40-50 on a good week, plus a couple of pound bonus. So you had to break in the first team to make what was good money in those days.
Of course, yeah.
But then, of course, Mark Bosman and the freedom of contract came later, Sky TV. And now, I mean, if I was playing now for Liverpool's first team, I'd buy our golf club. I mean, now I can just about afford the membership. So it's a completely different.
Oh, it's a different ball game now.
So how would you say playing for Aberdeen was different to Liverpool? Was it a completely different style of play? Did they play quite similar to you, and that's why Bill Shankly thought you'd do better there? What was the thought process behind it? Do you know?
They were a good team. They had a good manager. He'd just taken over. Eddie Turnbull. He was a legend in Edinburgh for Hibs. Had a famous 5-forward line. I mean, in Scotland, and he was determined, like Shankly, to make his mark. And had a good relationship with Shankly. And yeah, they did play a bit like Liverpool. The thing I enjoyed was the fact that you were playing in the first team. And when you were sat in the dressing room and it was 28,000, 30,000 outside, and you could hear Rangers next door, the studs banging on the ground, 9 internationals playing for them, Willie Henderson, John Gregg, captain of Scotland. it's a different league. You run on the pitch in your home city with your family there, your girlfriend who later became a wife there, and that's when you have to step up to the plate, you know.
Sure.
And we beat them 2-0, which is a great result for Aberdeen against Rangers.
Absolutely.
And I was a bit of a hero that night, you know, and I got a little taste of what it must be like, you know.
Sure.
That was unfortunate when I got an injury quite early on at Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's just the luck of the draw.
Yep.
You know, played a dozen games or something, then cruciate ligaments, and that finished me at Aberdeen. So then I'm in a biscuit factory. So you can go from being at Wembley with Liverpool in the 65 Cup final, walking up the pitch with Peter Thompson and the boys. A year later, you're throwing ropes around pallets of biscuits in a biscuit factory. So that's, you know, because don't forget, we all left school at 15. We had no training, no qualifications. Only played football, so all you could do is try and get another club.
Sure. And I think that's similar now. I think that's one of the similarities throughout the entire generations of football. It's just such a cutthroat business, isn't it?
Yeah, well, one of the things I write in my book is about the academy at Liverpool. There's so many children there from a very young age, 8-year-old. They get taken to Anfield. They get taken to Kirby.
Yeah.
They go into the academy, the different age groups. And how many come through? How many actually get to be Steve Gerrard or Jamie Carragher or
Of course.
Trent Alexander, of all them hundreds of kids that come through? And when they get to the age of 12 or 13, I mean, they go from being the best guy in the school, plays for Liverpool, to suddenly, sorry, we're letting you go.
That must be heartbreaking for kids.
Of course. Yeah.
After being with a club through their junior years and then having been told, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're not going to offer you a contract."
Yeah. It was different for us because we went to 17. We signed at 15 as apprentices, and we used to fork the pitch, clean the cop, paint the stands.
Clean the first team boots.
Clean the first team boots, yeah. And then when you became a professional at 17, somebody cleaned your boots. But I mean, it was 2 years where you had to prove yourself. And at the end of that 2 years, you went into Shankly's office. You had an idea because your performances
Merited it. Yes.
Some of the guys who were on the borderline, they'd go in Shankly's office, come out crying. So from 15 to 17, their life has been Liverpool Football Club, Melwood with the first team. And all of a sudden, Shank says, "Sorry, son, we're going to have to let you go."
Sure. Do you think, so he's obviously got you doing quite a lot of extra jobs on top of, you're obviously, you're playing, so like going around painting the clock, giving bits and pieces of clean. Do you think that's come as part of a work ethos that he wanted you guys to do? And if he didn't see that in you there, then he's not going to see it on the pitch.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't think it did us any harm whatsoever.
No.
You know, it's all very well, being a footballer and everything, but you've got to learn. You've got to work for your living.
Of course.
And these certain things, like sweeping a cup and painting. I remember having blisters, forking the ground at the end of a year. You won't see that nowadays.
Oh God, no.
I mean, I went to the training grounds at Kirby, and just to meet Steve Ivey once, and I met by security at the gates. Said, "I've come to see Steve Ivey." I thought something. All right, yes, yeah. Oh yes, sir. You booked it. So I go through these gates and I see all these BMWs and Mercs and I thought, what's going on? So when I got to meet Steve and I chat with him, I said to him, "I didn't realise the first team's trained here." He says, "They don't." I said, "Well, what's all this Mercedes Benz and Range Rover, top of the Range Rovers?" He says, "He's not going to believe it, but they're the lads under 19s and under 18s. This is about maybe 10 years ago." And I said, "I can't believe it." He says, "Oh, you wouldn't believe the money they're on." And they're driving around in these. And I thought, just imagine telling them, get the fork out and go and fork it down. I don't think that would happen.
We've got a picture, haven't we? We've got a famous picture of
Oh, yeah.
And the picture of me and Bobby Graham and Gordon forking the pitch.
Yeah.
And we're messing about, and I've got a Liverpool shirt over Bobby's head. Little kids, 15, 16, with Arthur Riley, the famous groundsman. He's in the background,
he was the head.
giving us a bit of a look, get on with your work. Not messing about, I mean, you never get kids doing that now. No. You try and clean the cop out after a first team match. And everybody was standing and they couldn't get out, You can imagine the detritus that was in the cop. And we had to go and clean a whole lot.
Happy days.
Quicker you get it done, the quicker it was all sorted, I suppose.
Then we'd go and play five-a-sides on the pitch against Shankly.
Reuben Bennett, Bob Paisley.
We play five-a-sides against Shankly, Paisley, Fagan,
Yeah,
every Monday morning. Shankly would come on the tango, five-a-side starting 10 minutes,
So I've got a question here that I had for later, but I'll ask it now. So in your book, you talked about when a shot was taken and it would hit the proverbial post, which was obviously the football boot, and you said it was a goal. And, I think it was Chris Lawler that said it wasn't. Yeah. So I wanted to ask what happened. Was it given as a goal in the end, or did you carry on playing?
a lot of people have got different memories of this, but I mean, the story's true.
It's absolutely true, this. And George tells it so well, so I'll let him tell you.
No, all there was, we'd play five-a-sides. There was Gordon, myself, Bobby Graham, I think Phil Tinney.
Tommy Smith.
Tommy Smith, yeah. And we're playing this five-a-side in the car park.
Yeah.
And in those days, there was sort of posts you could use with the wall. And the other goals was pumps, gym shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just quite relaxed, really. You have tracksuits on, and we were only kids, so we were running around like crazy. And they were just strolling around with experience, And this particular day was 0-0. It's a hard-fought game. Chris Lawler, unfortunately, just banged his ankle, so he couldn't play. But instead of going in the dressing room, we stood and watched, leaning against the turnstile. And then Shankly was drawing us towards him because he knew we were a man short. And he chipped his ball over our heads. We turned round at Tommy Smith looking at it. And Shankly said, "Right, that's a goal. Time up. Come on, boys, get a shower." And Tommy said, "That's not a goal, boss. It went over the pump. Not a goal." "It's a goal, son. I'm the manager. It's a goal." "Wasn't a goal, boss." "Well, ask Chris. He's an honest boy." "Hey, Chris, was that a goal or was it not a goal?" "Wasn't a goal, boss." "Jesus, Chris," he said, "we've waited a year for you to speak, son, and your first word's a lie."
That is true.
That's
I
true.
can honestly say that.
He used another word in front of lie, didn't he?
I can imagine he did.
Begin with a B. Yeah, so that was, they were good days, they were happy days. We had a great time playing five-a-sides, very competitive.
Of course, yeah. And I think with that competitiveness, it forces you to put that into a match perspective, doesn't it? So, and almost life, not taking no for an answer, always being competitive, always striving for the best, always trying to do the best that you can. And I think that's what I was getting at earlier with him being a subtle psychologist, is that he'll probably do things that you don't realise until you get a bit older, and you start to get through your games, and you start to notice that from that age of 15 onwards, it's the foundations, isn't it?
It is. We're both the same, aren't we? We both built our lives slightly different, but in the same way. With enthusiasm, you're building your business, your family. We all seem to have, and also the good thing, I mean, most of the kids in that day, we all married the same girl we're still married to.
Yeah.
There's about 6 or 7 of us. We all met our girlfriends, as it was, at Anfield, as kids, and we're still all married to them. My 55th anniversary next week.
Oh, congratulations.
Got married the same day England won the World Cup.
Did you really?
I'm Scottish, so I didn't care.
Yeah, of course you didn't. I bet you had a sly eye on it.
So anyway, you were talking about the five-a-sides and everything. Just one little thing to tell you. When I was in South Africa, Shankly wrote to me, and in the letter he said to me, he said, "Gordon's now with crew. I'll give him your best wishes. By the way, we're still winning the five-a-sides. No wonder we're 5 referees in the team."
So you've got quite a nice a picture section in your book that shows the letters that had been sent through from Shankly. But one that stood out to me was the one that was almost pulling you out. It was a reference. It was like a job reference.
Yeah, it was a
but
reference.
it was very, very short and sweet.
What it was, it's a unique reference, really, because if you have a reference, generally speaking, it's "Dear Sir or Madam," the start, and this one just says "Dear People." So he's addressing, in his mind, he's addressing the world. "Dear people," with a small p, wasn't even a capital P, one finger typewriting on his little Olivetti typewriter. And all he was doing was saying that was of good character. He said he would stake his life on my character, that'll do for me. That got me my first job.
Yeah, you can't get any better than that. Coming from the man himself.
In fact, the employer thought it was a Unilever, cheeseburger pounds. No, Nestle it was. They thought it was a forgery. The lad said to me, "Is that for real?" I said, "Yeah, it's my reference." And it got me the job, no question. I had to do a bit of work as well, obviously. But I mean, the character reference was a clincher, I think, and that saved my life.
Sure.
Because I had nothing else to go to. I'd have had to go to Derry City or Ellesmere Port Town, scramble around in a factory. And to get a job with a multinational company like Nestle, I had never sold anything in my life. But they saw some potential in me.
Of course.
And they trained me, and then everything went from there.
That's fantastic. Well, I mean, you spoke a couple of times about going through to South Africa as well. We'll come on to that in a sec. I just wanted to talk to you about, Gordon, about your... Well, first off, your debut. I'm presuming you can remember that like it was yesterday.
Oh, yes. Yeah, West Bromwich, just as I said earlier, I knew, looking at the team sheet, that I was playing West Brom away. And Don Howe, who was then the England fullback, he was marking me. So I had a reasonable game.
You roasted him.
Turn him inside out.
I had a reasonable game, but unfortunately we lost 1-0. A little story about that as well on my debut. We had a penalty, actually. It was 0-0 at the time. And Jimmy Melia took it. It was funny. We came in at full time and he missed the penalty. In fact, it hardly reached the goalkeeper. He says, the penalty. He says, the goalkeeper had come off, had a cup of tea, and he still wouldn't have reached him. It was he side-footed it into a wind. And he hardly reached the goal. So he wasn't a happy man. But yes, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Unfortunately, things didn't go great for me after that, but who knows? Life is full of ups and downs.
But yeah, I mean, the injuries were unfortunate, but you still got a couple of decent claims. You scored Liverpool's first ever European goal. That's something that's never going to be taken away from you.
No, it's true. Yeah. I mean, when I made debut, I was only 18, and I played a couple of games and I took ill, and I didn't play again. And then, of course, come the start of the 1964 season, Ian St John actually had appendicitis. So, and Liverpool had just bought Phil Chisnell from Manchester United. I was chosen to play in the Charity Shield match at Anfield against West Ham, Bobby Moore. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about the boss there before, telling him, build you up and everything. Well, prior to going out, he had a little quiet word with me and saying, "Now listen, Bobby Moore, slow." He says, "You can't turn, can't head the ball. Just take him, son. Take him. No problems." So I've come off, I've had a decent game, I've scored. He says, "You've just given the greatest centre-half in the world, the greatest back foreman in the world, a run-around, son." And that's what he did. He tells you before you go out, "Yeah, he's nothing, nothing." And then afterwards he tells you what you've just done. So that's psychology, the side
Always
of it.
Psychology, isn't it?
He builds you up. Yeah, so, and of course, the following Wednesday it was Reykjavik. And that was the first ever.
I'm glad you pronounced that name because I didn't have a
Reykjavik.
clue. I didn't have a clue how to pronounce
Reykjavik
that.
in Iceland, yeah. So
The real name's harder.
I've seen the full name. So there's a first part at the start of the name, isn't there? I didn't have a clue.
clue.
No, I tried to pronounce it a few times and I thought, I'm just going to say that you scored the first European goal because I can't pronounce it.
Reykjavik, yeah. So yes, it was a wonderful memory, and obviously, as you say, it can't be taken away from me.
Exactly.
It's it was a great movement down the left. 5 or 6 passes. Roger went to the byline, Sir Roger as I call him, and every time I see him, and he squared it back to me, and from 6 yards, I'm pretty lethal.
I should hope so.
But then I have to be honest, and I mishit it.
Did you really?
I did actually. Yes.
Sent the keeper the wrong way.
He actually went to the byline. He crossed it. He squared it back to me, and the goalkeeper was on the near post. And he's thinking, well, this fella's going to put it on the far side, which I should have, and which I tried to. So he went that way. And the ball went in between him and the post. So but there we are. And of course, I scored the fourth goal.
Sure.
The second. And then, of course, on the Saturday following, 3 days later, it was the first ever match of the day.
Yes, it was. It was, yeah. Arsenal, I think.
Arsenal,
it?
Yeah. People keep reminding me it was in black and white.
Kenneth Houston commenting.
So, and I had the pleasure of scoring 2 goals that day. Sir Roger actually has the claim to fame that he scored the first ever match of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I do wind him up every time I see him, though, that he said, Roger, you only scored 1.
I still outscored you.
And I scored the winner. No. It's only a wind-up thing, though. Yeah.
Sure, no, of course.
But they're great memories.
Yeah.
Which my grandchildren, my children, and now my grandchildren,
Wasn't that a question on Mastermind? Who
Yeah.
scored Liverpool's first goal? Was on
Was it
Mastermind,
really?
Yeah.
As you would guess, he didn't get it right.
He got it wrong.
Was he a Liverpool fan, though?
Oh yeah, that was his topic.
That was his.
That was his chosen topic.
Oh, no.
Liverpool Football Club.
Oh, God.
I was actually watching that, and I didn't know it was on, obviously. And when it came to this person, and I said, "Oh." And then he asked a question. I thought, I'm sitting there watching, and he got it wrong. So I think he said Roger, actually, if I recall.
Yeah,
I think he said Roger.
Can't blame him for that, I suppose.
No. But it's a happy memory I've got.
Of course. Yeah, totally.
Wonderful.
So for yourself, George, gone from Aberdeen. So where did it go wrong for Aberdeen to start off with? I think you said, was there an injury?
I played in the first team for the first few months, and then we were training on the beach at Aberdeen before we played Celtic. And I got tackled from behind by a lad called Tommy White. Tommy's brother, John White, was a very famous player, played for Spurs. Sadly, he lost his life due to a lightning strike in the early 60s. Tommy tackled me from behind, and I could tell his ACLs, In those days, it was much more difficult than it is today. Effectively finished my career at Aberdeen, almost finished my career, really. And at the end of the season, they let me go. And that was it, really, in one way. But I just determined. I went out and did some training in Liverpool, ran through the streets. My mother-in-law got me a job in Crowford's Biscuits. And all the guys in there, the Liverpool and Everton fans, they were interested in some of the stories and everything. And just by chance, I got a phone call from Cliff Lloyd, who was the PFA. Said Shankly had been on to him and recommended me because there was a lad from Port Elizabeth coming across recruiting players for the team, for Port Elizabeth City. Terry Mancini played for them, who became quite a well-known player later. Kevin Lewis, who Gordon and I played with at Anfield, he was there. He told me the crowds were 30,000. They were heading for going for the championship of South Africa, and the Ford Motor Company was sponsoring them. So Carol and I went down to Luton, and we met him, and he showed us the photographs and everything. Problem was, apartheid was on then, and there was a lot of controversy in the press about De Oliveira on the cricket side. And so I had a choice to make: do I go to South Africa or do I work in a biscuit factory for the rest of my life? So it was a no-brainer as far as I was concerned. So we got married quite quickly. Our father was thinking, why are they getting married in a week? And it's on the World Cup final day. But we had no choice because we had to fly to South Africa, and I think it was the 8th of August.
Because you didn't want to watch the game, that was all.
I did. Well, no, it's a funny story about that, because we were in the church getting married. Peter Thompson was at the wedding. Now, if it hadn't been for Ramsey with the wingers, he'd have been playing probably with Cali. But Peter and Barbara, his wife at the time, were at the wedding. And we were getting married, and just as Carol said, I do, it was a bit of a noise went up at the back of the church. Somebody seemed to shout, yes. I thought, that's very nice. I turned down. The Scottish members of the family, the Germans, had just equalised. So, then we went to South Africa on 6th of August. So I had a great time over there, great career over there, 2 good years. Won the league championship in 1967. 15,000 people at the airport welcomed us back. And I really made it quite big there. And that was a tragedy, because I knew the way I was playing there, and the goals I was scoring. If I could have only had a chance at Liverpool. The good thing was the grounds over there were quite firm. so it suited me. It wasn't muddy.
Sure.
So, but we used to play in Johannesburg, 6,000 feet above sea level, and you had to go up there a few days before to acclimatise, But yeah, it was great in South Africa. And then after that, I could talk all night about South Africa. I got stabbed, unfortunately, and I brought my career to South Africa. I almost do a premature end, but obviously I survived it. And then I decided we wanted to come back home because I'd done the 2-year contract, which we always wanted to do. We didn't intend to go there permanently. And so I wrote to, I met Sid Reeks, who was a chairman. Just by chance, I got a letter from a lad who said that Mr. Reeks is in Port Elizabeth in transit from Durban. I'd love to meet you. And so I went up to the airport, met Sid, with Carol. We had a few drinks, had a chat, and he said, "You've done well here," because people are coming up for autographs and everything. I said, "No, we're coming home, Mr. Reeks. 2 years, and we're having this little trouble with an intruder in the apartment." And he said, "Well, when you come back," he said, "get in touch with Billy." He called him Billy. "Get in touch with Billy. He'll fix you up with a club. He loves you. He'll sort you out." So that's what I did. I came back, went up to Anfield. You couldn't do this today. Walked straight in. Well, saw Roger Hunt in the car park. He said, "What are you doing here? I thought you were in South Africa." I said, "I'll come and see the boss, see if he can fix me up with a club." He said, "He will. He's in his office. Just go in." So I went off down, I walked down towards Shankly's office, and the door opened at the end of the passage, and he came out with 2 reporters. Dave Horridge, I think, one of them from the Daily Mirror. And they were dismissed as soon as he saw me. Typical Shankly. "Come in, son. Come in, son. You haven't grown. I thought the sun made you grow." All this stuff, all these one-liners.
Not me eating your vegetables.
Come in and sat in his office, and a little chat, and then he said to me, "Where do you want to play?" And I almost said Arsenal or something. Liverpool was never on. I said, "Anywhere, boss." I was about Tranmere Rovers. So I said, "That's great," because I'm Birkenhead.
Local, yeah.
Come back to Liverpool. I had a little boy then, he was only 4 months old. So he gets on the phone to Dave Russell, the manager at Tranmere. And within about 5 minutes, he'd got me a month's trial, first team wages. Dave Russell didn't know who I was. And when I went over there in the afternoon, he looked at me up and down and he said, "I hope you can play." I said, "Well, the Shankly's word not good enough for you." He said, "Well, you're cocky enough." He said, "Come on." So I had a great 2 years at Tranmere. Played about 50 games in the first team.
Sure.
And the only thing I left Tranmere for was because I was getting towards 29. I'm thinking the future. I'm thinking maybe here for another couple of years. Then what am I going to do? I didn't have a huge amount of savings. We bought a house. What we made in South Africa, I managed to buy a house. That was great. But future was beckoning and it looked a bit dark, so I thought I better get out and get myself sorted up with a job. And that's when Shankly's reference came to the fore when I went for an interview. I got a job against about 80, 90 people from nowhere. And I left the interview the first time because I was so nervous. I thought, can't do this. And I'm walking down Lime Street and somebody in my mind said, what would you think? Quitter, go back. So I went back and got the job. So everything moved on from there. I never looked back after that.
Sure. I have to say, keeping with the theme of the podcast on kind of mental resilience and mental health, your perseverance is admirable, especially after what's happened in South Africa, and you've had the knockbacks at Liverpool, knockbacks at Aberdeen, what happened obviously in South Africa, as I said. You've definitely, I think Shankly would be proud of you. He certainly instilled a lot of resilience.
The funny thing is, at the end, even in the last 8 or 9 months, Shankly's still in my mind when I was going through a really serious illness, from a 5-way heart bypass and then followed by bacterial double pneumonia and doing a resuscitate order on me. And all the time I'm thinking, keep fighting. And then when you get the oxygen, you just got to keep going. And eventually you get through. And the thing is, Shankly always said to Gordon, I never give up, didn't he?
Never give up. Yep, that was one of his.
Never give up. I remember once playing 5-a-sides and the ball was going towards the cricket stump out for a goal. And somebody had hit the ball towards it and it was going in. And I ran. I slid along, just tipped the ball past the bump. And I felt this hand on my head like, see what happens when you never give up, son. See what happens. Go the ball past the post, by keeping on it. So all these things he used to drum into us.
I mean, to be quite honest, this man should not be here today. I mean, what he's gone through in the last 18 months is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm seeing him at death's door. And his fighting spirit is just second to none, honestly.
I have to agree.
Gordon phoned up my wife every single day I was in hospital. Every single day I was in for 5 weeks, I think. I was 17 nights in intensive care on an oxygen mask. And even when I had my five-way heart bypass last August, I was in for 10 nights in intensive care. But at the end of the day, that was a walk in the park, the bypass, compared to the pneumonia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was really serious. I was on 70% oxygen one time. I've still got a little bit, as you can tell, hoarseness on the voice, but it's getting better every day. And I've been out of hospital now for 3 months, so I reckon it's a 6-month recovery period to be 100%.
You might be wishing he'd had a hoe. He's supposed to have gone completely at the end of this. Sorry about that.
I mean, mates are calling me. They're all calling me Lazarus.
Trying to start him talking is like...
No, it's fantastic. It's brilliant. It's some amazing stories.
Oh,
I mean, we're talking about quite a lot about George Gordon, but I mean, you had your injuries at Liverpool, but you still got something at Crewe Alexander, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I broke my leg twice at Liverpool. I had 2 knee operations. I broke my arm. A very bad ankle injury, ligaments. So, and of course, that's at one point I decided, Crewe had come in for me, and the boss called me in and he said, I don't want you to go, son, but I've got to tell you, there's been an offer in for you, and I'd like you to think of it. He says, but I don't want you to go. So, but I thought I'd been there 7.5 years. Over the last 18 months prior to that, substitutes had come in. I'd only been sub once or twice, and I thought,
chances are few and far
between. So I thought, right, let's take a go. It's first team football all the time. Okay, it was in the 4th division as they were then. And I went in the October. We got promoted at the end of that season to the 3rd division. And things. I didn't play. I didn't feel as if I played to my potential. Mm-hmm. But I did reasonably well. Then start of the next season, I was buzzing. There was a lot of talk that I was going to be move on. From there was Sheffield United. There was quite a few clubs after me. And then about the 11th game, this double fracture. I broke my leg again, but in 2 places, whereas prior to that I only broke the one bone. Mm-hmm. I broke tib and fib. So I was out of the game for 18 months.
Yes, I think now the recovery time is a lot faster, isn't it? Than when it was back then. Well, things are different. I was in a plaster cast right up to my hip.
Oh, wow. For 6 months. For 6 solid months. And every time I used to go back when they used to change the plaster, I'm thinking, oh, God, it's going off. And all I could see was my leg going thinner and thinner.
Yeah.
And then he said, no, we put me back on. I have an X-ray. Oh, no, got to put plaster on again. Mm-hmm. So it was difficult. And then 18 months. But when I came back after 18 months, even though I back in the first team, I knew in my heart of hearts that it wasn't good. I'd lost a bit of pace, and I was 27. So and I was involved in a petrol station opposite the Cop with Peter Thompson. So I decided to pack in. I had a word with Peter, and he says, right, if you want to pack in, you can run the business. He didn't take an active part, he was just a figurehead. So, and that's what I did. At 27, I decided to hang up my boots and never kicked the ball after it.
It must be one of the toughest decisions, especially for something that's been a part of your life, for your entire adulthood, really.
Yes.
But I bet there was a lot that you can take mentality-wise from football into business. And again, we come back to what Shankly has said about having enthusiasm or you're nothing. Yeah. Just having that drive and that perseverance. You don't realise it goes into everything.
It goes into all walks of life. I mean, I realised I had to get up early in the morning. It was a total different, getting up at 6 o'clock, whereas I used to go in for training at 10 and used to finish by 12:30. You'd finish, that was your day's work. This when I was up at 6 o'clock. I was open up the garage at 6:30, and I was working till 6:30, 7 o'clock. Because I realised, well, I had a wife. We had just got married, and we wanted to start a family. So, that's what I had to do, and that put me in good stead. What the boss had said.
Sure.
To look, you've got to work. You don't get anything in life without working for it.
That's right.
That's one of his.
Your boss used to say, nothing happens.
Nothing happens unless you make it. And I feel very grateful to the man, for giving me, giving me my first opportunity in a job, and B, for putting me on the road, which I think in the right direction.
Of course, yeah. I'm sure you guys are still very close to the players from back in the day. I can imagine you guys still get the opportunities to talk with players like Ian Callaghan.
Well, Gordon sees them more than I do, I think, because of the Ex-Players Association. But yeah, I'm still in touch with some of them as well. Sadly, most of them are gone now, apart from...
Well, it's Carly. Yeah, it's still Carly about, Rogers about.
Chris Lowell.
Yeah, Chris, yeah. But there's very few of the 1960s.
Gordon Mill.
Yeah.
About four or five.
Yeah, Billy Stevenson still with us.
Because dementia has been quite a bad thing for footballers of our generation, as you can imagine.
There's quite a big thing about it at the moment, isn't there? About whether they think they should stop kids heading the ball, and they kind of. I don't know if that's actually come in or not. But I think that they were looking at.
They were looking at it.
Yeah.
There's got to be something, because if you look at the England team that won the World Cup, most of them contracted dementia. If you look at the Liverpool team, most of them have contracted it. All of them. Even the management, Bobby Paisley and Ronnie Moran. If you went through that team of the 60s, it's frightening, isn't it? Tommy,
Jerry Byrne,
Ronnie Yates.
Yeah, Ronnie Yates.
It goes on, and it's not just Liverpool. I suppose a lot of. So we're lucky, Gordon. We can still.
Yeah. Mind you, we never headed the ball, did we, Josh?
I scored a lot of diving headers. I had to be diving headers too because it was small.
Oh, fantastic. There was just one more question I did. Oh, that was it. So there's an interesting story about a £1 coin in a trophy cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
Just talk to me about that.
Well, Gordon and I played a challenge match at the League Golf Club against Roger Hunt and Tommy Lawrence. We were kindly invited by Roger. It was his club, and we had a lovely day, didn't we?
Oh, fantastic.
Got beautiful photographs now. Really. When we finished the game, before the game, Tommy wangled an extra few shots on his handicap. I haven't played for a long time, I'm getting old now. Roger's the same. So we, being a bit younger, we said, yeah, okay, we'll give you a few extra shots. So in the end, we beat them anyway at the end of the game. So we go in the bar now after the game. We're sitting having a chat, the old times, Shankly stories and everything. And then as we're going out the door, Roger says, lovely to see you, Georgie. Gordon, play again sometime. I said, hang on, Roger, you forgot something, haven't you? What about the pound? So he says, but he's a Welsh accent, but he's a Scotsman, just like you. He said, a pound, he gave me the pound. I just walked over and said, not every day you get a pound off a World Cup winner. So it's in my trophy cabinet now. It's only worth £1, but it's worth a lot more to me.
It's sentiment, isn't it?
But that tells you a lot about these lads of the 60s. Yeah. I mean, Tommy and Roger, who was a World Cup man, Tommy, an international Scottish. And there's just two, and they were quite happy to, there's no airs and graces about them. They were same as Callie's a gentleman. They were all great lads. There was nothing.
Remember the night we went
nothing
to the
big-headed about them at all.
Went to the Shankly Hotel with Tommy, didn't we?
Yeah.
When they played Norwich that time, remember?
Norwich, yeah, 4-3.
EDU, and he passed away not long after that. I mean, it was very nice to see him that night, in the Shankly Hotel. Liverpool playing Norwich, and we were doing a little bit of a chat after the game. And Liverpool were losing. And Tommy was getting nervous. He said, fancy this. He said, look at next minute, Adam Lallana scored a winning goal, jumped into Klopp's arms, and the whole place erupted. And he said, I think we're going to enjoy it now.
That was the most incredible game that was, wasn't it? It was just, had everything.
Yeah, that's when Suarez scored.
No.
It was this one, yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't that game. It wasn't that game.
No, Lallana scored in the
This
last.
is the 5-4 game.
Yeah. Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, Suarez has had his fair share of goals against Norwich, hasn't he?
Yeah, he did. He didn't. He seemed to like playing against them.
Yeah.
What you said is true. They're fantastic lads, weren't they?
Oh, yes, yeah.
I mean,
All the 60s.
no side to them. You speak to anybody, no edge. Like, for all they'd achieved. It's fantastic. Do you remember that incident when Tommy was stopped in the street by a reporter? And
yes, I remember seeing that. Yeah. Go on, I'll let you tell the story.
Well, no, I mean, when we went to the funeral, Tommy's funeral, his son told it, didn't he?
Yes.
He said they were having tea at night and said his dad was out in town. It's just Stephen Lawrence, Tommy's son. He's Tommy's son, isn't he? And he said, we were out there just having our tea, and then Dad comes in. Anything happened today? Like, no. I said, just I was stopped by some reporter in town. He said, as he was talking, he came on the news.
And he says, I was there that day, Tommy said. He says, I was the goalkeeper.
Who are you then? Oh, Tommy Lawrence. Alan Ball scored the winner. And it was
He
so
seemed so
typical of
surprised,
Tommy.
didn't he?
So typical of Tommy, it was so beautiful. And it went viral all over the world.
It did,
Oh,
yeah.
it did.
No, I remember seeing it. It's so humble as well, though, isn't it? 'Cause he didn't take offence to it not being recognised. He's almost appreciative to be able to relive the memory again.
Yeah.
Just
And
about
I think that sort of that ethos has kind of been lost in today's football, and I don't know whether that's because of money or
I
there
think
could be a few contributing factors. I'm sure you can imagine. I mean, don't get me wrong; they're athletes. They're still very dedicated, but I think for some players it can sometimes go to their heads.
social media is a big thing. We didn't have that. You see, social media. I mean, today, somebody could be sitting in Zimbabwe watching Liverpool win the cup, and our day, we didn't have that reach, did we? Of controversy, things like that.
Gosh, if you guys had social media around back then, I can imagine you all got in a lot of trouble.
yes. but we won't go into that.
No, of course not. Of course not. Gents, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on. We're going to have to draw it to a close now, which is a shame because I've still got so much that I can talk about. But I think just one parting gift for the end of the podcast is just what you'd, for new up-and-coming players, what bit of advice would you guys give? We'll start with you, Gordon, if you got anything that you'd say to the newer generation.
To a new generation of kids coming through, just give everything. Make sure at the end of the day, you felt you've given everything to achieve what you wanted to achieve. I put on a personal note, I know I didn't achieve what I would love to have. For whatever reason, whether it was my injuries or I wasn't good enough, or the other lads were better than me, I don't know. But I just feel that my one parting word to the kid is, please give everything you've got. Don't take for granted that it's going to come your way and success will come your way. Just give it your all.
And do you echo that, George?
Yeah, I do. I think you've just got to keep your feet on the ground as well. Don't get carried away by the hype. Keep as Gordon says, 100% positive attitude. Believe in yourself. If you've got the ability, and you must have the ability if you've been brought into a professional club. So I think you've got to work on it. Never give up, however bad it seems, and every single day do your best. And that's the best advice I could give, really. And your dreams could come true.
Great advice. Thank you very much. Gordon, you said you was nervous before the podcast, but I think you've done very well. You spoke very easily. You've been fantastic guests. Thank you very much. You've been fantastic guests, and certainly I think we've got so much more that we can talk about. So I mean, if you guys ever fancy it in the future, we'd love to get you back on again, and maybe we can talk a bit more about kind of. I know, George, you said you had a few other things. You could probably almost write another book on plenty of other things that you've had happen. So it'd be fantastic to talk about that. Until next time, gents, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
That concludes this episode on a Fighting Chance podcast. Remember, if you're interested in finding out more about what we do and what we have to offer, please check out our website or Facebook group, which will be added as links in the description. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, share and subscribe. Until next time, for myself and Paul, thank you and goodbye.